I did like a little pre-comp burner workout, like get the heart rate elevated the day before so I wasn't sluggish. And I'm sprinting on the assault bike, like 8-second burst, nothing. And I was like, whoa, I'm like, I can't breathe so well. I'm like, it's like kind of knocked me around, and I felt a little bit lightheaded. And I felt like my heart rate elevated quite quickly. I'm like, that's strange. Kept going as I do. I did it. I did some lifting and I was just a little bit shaky, like a little bit not quite myself. And I was like, oh, that's strange. The first time I felt a little bit breathless, like, like when I exercised at a high intensity. I'd trained through the whole entire time. And then after that night, that was the first time I started to not be able to breathe. And I was pretty nervous because the first event was a swim, and it was a mass start of 90 people in the water with the men who normally just trample over the top of you.
Yeah.
And I remember lying in bed just like, I'm going to drown.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the ATP Project with a little bit of a raw CEO take today as well. I'm here with Jeff and also our athlete, Cara Saunders. Welcome, Cara.
Hey, good to be back.
Good
been
to
a while.
have you back. It has.
It has been a while.
What's
We've
been
had you
happening?
on for like two other episodes in the past, haven't we? Is this your third?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, maybe third.
But we're going to mix it up a little bit this time. We're going to ask you
Yeah.
a little bit of obviously what's going on with you
Put me
as an
under the
elite
pump.
athlete, but also a little bit of business as well too, and
Yeah.
everything else in between. So
Cool.
it'll be great.
Let's do
Yeah,
it.
let's start. Well, why don't we just start with some CrossFit stuff? Obviously, the last couple of years have been pretty crazy and all over the place and unpredictable. How's it been as a professional athlete?
Dealing with specifically COVID.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
like, obviously that's got a bit of crimp in your step, right?
Yeah, it look, I think one thing that you learn to accept, I think I probably learned to accept it and understand a little bit more somewhere halfway through I'm 10 years into competitive CrossFit now, is understanding that sport can be super cruel. You fail more times than you succeed. Stuff always comes up. There's a lot of things that need to align for things to go well. And you train every single day. It's like I said to Maddie once, it's like, imagine turning up to your day job every day, working all the hours, hoping that like you were going to get your paycheck at the end of the year, and then something happened and they're like, nope, sorry. And it's like totally metaphorical, right? Not about the money, but it's like, nope, it didn't happen. And that's kind of like what happened for me. I was like, I put all of this work and all this time into training all year round with a little kid, with a business, just trying to like manage it all. But I know that it's a possibility, and especially like this year more than anything. Like the last 2 years have been rough because obviously we had a COVID competition year in 2020,
Yeah.
and that was online and it was messy and it was really, really hard to navigate, and definitely not like any other competition. Then working through this season, I got to get back out on a competition floor again, and it was amazing. And, I always perform so much better out there and healthy and good. And then, get to the final stage and get COVID on the way over to the competition, which
that was interesting.
Throws a spanner in the works for you.
it does. I remember I wrote out a list on the plane on the way over there. Like I always kind of go through like the worst possible things that could happen. And then I try and like mentally have like a plan, and it's more like a coping plan. Like how will I make this a positive if this happens? Like all of the risks that could happen in competition. Cause right, like I could get injured the week before or anything could happen, like someone could trip me on a run 2 events in and you're out. Like it's especially in our sport because we do so many different things. And I had it on the top of my list and I'm like, did I make this happen? It was like, I could get COVID, and it was so much of a possibility, especially leaving Australia and then going to the US where it's just everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
They have totally different ways of doing things over there. Everyone's like much closer and there aren't the same restrictions now. And and I did. And so obviously by the time I got to competition, I was testing negative and they allowed me to go on with the competition.
Oh, right. So you tested, so you got there.
Mm-hmm.
Were you feeling okay?
Yeah. So I traveled about, say, 30 hours, masked up the entire time, 3 flights worth because I went from Brisbane to Sydney and then Sydney through the US all the way to Columbus, Ohio. So it was quite a long drawn out trip. I had to stay in Sydney a night before I left because you couldn't fly out of Brisbane or Gold Coast. And then, I had to wear a mask the entire time. It was incredibly strict. It was like on the plane, if you fall asleep and it drops below your nose, they tell you to pull it back up. They'll wake you up and tell you to pull it back up. So like always did that, always washed my hands, did all of the right things. I get to the US and I was feeling okay. I was jet lagged as expected. I always get pretty jet lagged going to Ohio because it's just that little bit further. Heading further towards the East Coast is always a little bit rough. And I was super stressed because I left my daughter for the first time. So she's only like I had to wean her from breastfeeding before I left, which I was ready to do anyway, but I would have done it post-competition ideally. But I decided to leave her behind so that I didn't have to drag her through this nightmare of traveling in COVID. Left her behind. That was super stressful. And then go through the airport, get there, think I'm just jet lagged and whatever. I was training pretty much isolated anyway because I was staying on a farm with my friend Dan and training in his barn. So I was like isolated anyway. And
how were you going with that training? Was it good training? Like were you training at a high level? It
felt like jet lag training.
Okay.
So like keep in mind I was in a semi-taper leading into competition. So I wasn't doing crazy high intensity stuff. I was doing double sessions. I was still going to the track and doing a lot of running in the heat. I'd gone from winter to summer, 14 hours or something different. So I was like getting it done. And I just remember I would like do one session and then come back to his house and I'd have a midday nap. And then I'd go, get myself up and be like, hey, you don't get to sleep anymore. I need to get over this jet lag. I was there for less time beforehand. So I was like, I need to kind of get up and get used to the time zone quicker. I'd go and train again. And I was like, oh man, this jet lag, the worst jet lag I'd ever had before was going to Ohio last time. So I was like, oh, I'm pretty lethargic.
Yeah.
But still training, getting everything done, totally fine. And then towards the end, I had a couple of like hot flushes, I guess. It wasn't, I never got like a full blown fever. And I'd get kind of warm and I was like, just before we left to drive to Madison, Wisconsin, I said to Dan, oh, jet lag got me so bad this time again. I can't believe it. It hasn't been the most ideal lead up. I've been stressed and really tired and just lethargic. And I'm like, but you do what you do and you carry on. And he's like, haha, you probably got COVID, like makes a joke. And I'm like, oh, and I remember going and lying down that night and I was like, oh, you've put it in my head now. I feel like I need to go get tested. There was nothing else that sort of indicated that I had it. And
how long was this after you'd landed?
Maybe almost 2 weeks-ish.
Yeah.
So I would have gotten through pretty much all of it by that point. And because I'd felt pretty bad, like all lethargic and everything since I got there. And based on my timeline of a couple of things, I think it was about that. And then I was like, look, before we go to the next state, I'm going to do the right thing. I'm going to go through a drive-through. I'm going to get tested. And then we'll do the big drive. It was like 10 hours to drive to Wisconsin. So when I got tested and that day we drove out, I had like really bad migraine and I'd messaged Maddie back home and I'm like, so weird. I'm like, it's like the first time in my life I'm getting migraines. And then so anytime I get sick, like if I just get like a flu which is super rare, I get like lower back pain. It's kind of like that sickness. I don't know if it's in my kidneys or whatever.
Yep.
I had a little bit of that. I had a migraine. I was like, oh God, now I sit in the car for 10 hours, but I was fine. I was like, okay, I just feel a bit crappy. I'm just going to rest and drink heaps of water on the drive. And then we get there, we get to the house. It was luckily again, it was like a family friend of his. We get into this house and I get a text message, you're positive. And I'm like, on the phone to Maddie, I'm like, you will not believe it. I'm like, I've just like tested positive for COVID. I can't believe it. I don't know what to do. I'm like, it's a whirlwind. Gosh, it's the end of the day, and I'm like, I don't know what's happening. And up until this point, right, what was just making me feel better is he's like, oh, look, with the jet lag, do some Wim Hof breathing and do some like cold showers. So every morning and every night I was doing cold showers. It helped so much. And that's what was getting me through. I was like doing Wim Hof breathing. I was reading, doing like writing in my gratitude journal, trying to just be like positive, lots of positive light type stuff. Get there, test positive, and then had to start the process of like, can I compete? Can I not compete? I kind of feel okay. Am I allowed? I'm testing positive. What do I do? So I went and backtracked the timeline of like when I felt warm for the first time, when I felt this and that. Talked to a doctor friend of mine back here in Australia who helped me kind of build out a bit of a clinical timeline of it. We presented that. We wrote up a document and presented it to the CrossFit Games because I was feeling totally fine. I was like still training, no problem. Still just felt like a little bit what I thought was jet lagged.
Yeah.
And presented that to them, and they've said to me, look, I wanted to get in before registration because I didn't want to turn up to registration and potentially be like COVID positive and then risk anyone else, but you have to turn up to registration, and registration is like 3 days before comp.
Right.
So I sent this timeline through to them, look after myself in the process. And they said, look, if you turn up, because we have to get tested before you can compete.
Yep.
You turn up to registration day and you get tested, which would be an antigen test. If you test negative, you can go ahead with registration and you can compete.
So the antigen test, how was it different? Did you have a nasal swab or was it a rapid test in the mouth?
So it was still a nasal swab. So
Okay.
I had a nasal swab that was a PCR test that tested the first time. Then I had a nasal swab for a rapid antigen. It was like 10 minutes, whereas the first time took like 24 or 36 hours or something like that to come back. This one was like I did it, drove forward, waited 10 minutes. I tested negative.
Yeah.
The way they explained it to me, and I'm not a professional, I did a lot of reading while I was there to try and figure out what was going on, but they said essentially that the antigen test is like so sensitive that it would show up. It will only test positive if you're in the peak of your infectious period, essentially.
Yeah.
So they said if you're negative and you're not in the peak of your infectious period, then we will let you, if you're not infectious, we'll let you compete.
Cool.
But obviously a PCR test, they explained that it can be, for some people, it can be a month, 2 months or whatever, that you can still keep testing positive even though you're not infectious anymore.
Yeah. And there's a lot to do with the cycle count, and it depends on state to state. And there's a lot of controversy around the PCR test. But obviously the second antigen test is probably a lot more accurate. So, I mean, and obviously you had it, obviously, because of the way that you felt. And your
there's no doubt I had it based off like how I felt and a few things. So there's otherwise, Maddie said, oh, look, maybe it's just a false positive. And I said, no, it's not. I haven't felt well.
Yeah.
Just like you said with the migraines, like things that you don't usually get.
That I would never get. I've never had a migraine before. And I was like, this doesn't feel like a normal headache. It's quite strong. Like it's kind of knocking me about a little bit. And this is at the tail end, which was super bizarre. So I go through, I register and go ahead. We were out to compete so the first day of competition was on Wednesday. On Tuesday afternoon, we had like a testing day. We went out and we tested some of the equipment. And then I did like a little pre-comp burner workout, like get the heart rate elevated the day before so I wasn't sluggish. And I'm sprinting on the assault bike for like 8-second burst, nothing. And I was like, whoa. I'm like, I can't breathe so well. I'm like, it's like kind of knocked me around. And I felt a little bit lightheaded. And I felt like my heart rate elevated quite quickly. I'm like, that's strange. Kept going as I do. I did it. I did some lifting and I was just a little bit shaky, like a little bit not quite myself. And I was like, oh, that's strange. The first time I felt a little bit breathless, like, like when I exercised. It was when I exercised at a high intensity. I trained through the whole entire time. And then after that night, that was the first time I started to not be able to breathe. And I was pretty nervous because the first event was a swim and it was a mass start of 90 people in the water with the men who normally just trample over the top of you.
Yeah.
And I remember lying in bed just like, I'm going to drown. My daughter's going to have no mother. Like, I'm like stressing because I'm like, I can't breathe now. What do I do? Meanwhile, Maddie's working his magic back in Australia, going through medical team for me, like with my email, organizing a Ventolin to try and get me something through so that I can breathe for the swim.
Yeah.
He's like coordinated it with all these people to bring me this Ventolin. The guy that was bringing it to me turned up to the lake on the morning of competition and went to the wrong side of the lake.
Oh, God.
So I'm on the other side of the lake and he's texting me. I'm like, they're about to send me into the water for this start. And in my head, I was like, I don't have anything. I haven't had a Ventolin since I was a kid, when I probably didn't even need it and they gave it to me. And I was like, this is going to be my magic pill. I never take anything. I don't even take Panadol or Nurofen, so my body's just going to go, yes, I'm going to open up my lungs and I'm just going to get out there and swim. And then I'm standing in the water and I see him with this Ventolin. And I'm like, I don't have it. And I'm like, I just got to go. So I went in for the workout. I do the first event. It took me about, I'd say 400 meters or so of the mile swim, maybe 500 meters before I felt I started to kind of settle into more of an aerobic zone and I could control my breath. But I couldn't get out fast. I couldn't get out in a good position. So on an event where I would normally be like up the front, I was 20th. And we're on this paddleboard. I'm like kayaking. And the kayaking is like, it should be like more muscularly challenging. But I was kind of like, oh man, I'm so lethargic. And I'm like kayaking down. I get out of the water and I go to run and my legs are just like empty. Like I haven't done anything with my legs. They've just been there on the kayak still working. And I'm like running to the end and I just like kind of collapsed and I was like, oh no, it's like getting worse. And in my mind, I was like, look, I need to do this day of competition so that I hit the minimum standard. I need to do all of these workouts because Thursday's a rest day and I might come good. And then I can just make up the points on Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So I'm like, I just need to get through these 4 events. And then every event just got harder and harder.
That was a brutal day.
It was one of the hardest days of my life physically.
Yeah.
And I couldn't get through a workout without drinking water because I just couldn't get any oxygen in. And I was like drinking water, but this is at the CrossFit Games, and I'm stopping drinking water between every round. Like I was like, I just got to do what I've got to do to tick off the minimum standard of this event to give myself an opportunity to like fight back for some points if I come good, because I'll kick myself if I don't do it. And then I come good on Thursday and I could have seen out the weekend. So I'm struggling through, I do like a 500 meter run and I get out for the first 100 meters and I just die. I'm just like falling behind. I'm just like struggling. And I finished the day and then that night was really bad. I just like coughed all night, like violently coughing. Like I've never coughed like that before. Just coughing, like so much pressure internally. I actually felt fine, if that makes any sense. Like I didn't feel ill, but I couldn't stop coughing.
Right.
And so I had called my naturopath. She was in Germany at the time. She had an account with like a supplement company over in the US and sent me some random herbs. I had a bunch of other stuff. I'm taking everything. Like I'm just like taking whatever I can to get through to like just relax. And it just was worse. And then all day Thursday, just cough. I didn't go anywhere. And I'm like, I can't go on. Not only am I not going to be able to perform because I'm barely completing the workout, but I'm potentially going to do some damage because I'm just putting so much extra strain on my body right now. Like my heart and my lungs are just having to work so much more.
Yeah.
In the meantime, I'd given it to Dan, who I was staying with. He then couldn't compete in his master's category, so he couldn't even register. He knew he had it obviously right away because he knew I had it. And he rested for a week and was totally fine and went home and exercised, no problem. So for me, it was just, I obviously trained through it and didn't rest, needed to rest, went out there and then tried to do something at a really high intensity with a lot of stress behind it. And my body just was like, no. And then looking back on the photos, my lips were like blue because I couldn't get it. It was like someone sent me a video yesterday and of me working out. I'm like, wow, I just didn't realize because, my mindset is like, you don't stop until you have to stop. Like you just keep going. That's what we do. And then I kind of got to the point, I'm like, wow, if this is like long-term health stuff and I'm like a parent and, I just want to like live a good, healthy life and I've always taken care of my health, I can't do this to myself. So I had to withdraw, which was terrible. Didn't go back to the stadium. I just stayed home and rested and tried to figure out how to get home because I was like, if I keep testing positive, they're not going to let me on a plane. Like by a PCR, you have to get a negative PCR. And then I'm away from my daughter. My husband's got to go back to work. I need to go home to her. I have to quarantine yet. I'm going to miss out on my spot in quarantine, So I just sat home stressing for a few days and trying to rest and trying to figure out my trip back home. And then here we are. So it's been, another year of my like 2 comeback years after having a baby. I was like fit as ever, so fit, so strong, so ready to go. And I didn't even get to do it. And I go out there and have to show like, my worst. Like I could have done a better job 2 weeks postpartum than what I was able to do, so.
Yeah, Tony and I were watching. And we hadn't spoken to Elsa because Elsa had watched it live, I think.
Yeah, that's right. Because I was messaging her and I was like, just pull out. I'm like, we don't care.
No, and Tony hadn't, Elsa hadn't told us because Tony's like, I can't wait. So we sit down and we're like going, here we go.
What's going on?
I literally tried to tell Tony. She literally went, zip. She's like, nope. And I'm like, no, but she just like kept zipping me. And I was like,
I need to tell you this.
You're gonna just discover it yourself.
we're gonna watch. So we're watching and we're like going, what's happened? Because like we knew like this, is she homesick? Is she?
Because you hadn't even gone on like Tony hadn't
No,
even checked
we
social
don't. We
media.
don't.
Like
We don't.
she just like
So
fully
and like going,
was committed to
no.
watching.
And I said to Tony, I said, wonder if Kara's got COVID. She's like, no. Anyway, then she messaged Elsa. I can't remember even what she said.
Okay, tell me a secret.
Yeah. And it was like, yep.
Yep.
And we're like, oh no. And we just felt so devastated for you.
Yeah.
Like we're going 2 years in a row. It is so horrible. I won't say unfair because like what's the fairness thing, right? But it's just the luck is just so
also
bad.
mentally. Like I know you're quite, intuitive and mentally strong, but as an athlete, but like still, like that's still got to take a toll on.
Oh yeah, it's a kick in the guts. Like all I could think of, the hardest part for me, honestly, because I'm a parent, like, was just like I left my daughter, I weaned her, I've left her and she doesn't even understand why I've left her for nothing.
Yeah.
I'm like, I've come here for nothing. And then the only way to get through stuff like that is to obviously change your perspective because if you sit and drown in sorrow of all the negative, then nothing good is going to come of it. And then it really is a waste, right? So for me then, funnily enough, and I mean, you hear stories like this and you think people are just full of crap when they like say it, but it was almost one of the best things that's ever happened to me since, and then going into quarantine, and I had no choice but to reflect and grow and work on my, especially sitting after all of that. And then trying to get home was a whole nother nightmare in itself, right? Like getting on my plane was delayed and they pushed first of all, they pushed my flight a day earlier and didn't tell me. So I went on to check and had to drive till Milwaukee to get a PCR test back in time, like on a Sunday. It just kept going and going. And it was like, there was just so much. It just kept piling up. I'm like, just keep going. And then I get to quarantine and I've got 2 weeks by myself in a room.
Where did you quarantine?
I quarantined in Sydney. So you have to quarantine where you land.
Yeah.
So I really wanted to try and get back to Queensland. And I sit in quarantine and everything was going crazy and they're about to shut down, people being allowed back into Queensland. I'm like, I remember being 3 days out from coming home and it was getting worse and worse.
Is that when they halved the intake coming back?
Yes. So they halved it while I was in there. And I was like, and I remember my manager messaged me. He's like, right now, he goes, I know you don't feel very lucky, but you're one of the luckiest people I know. Like I'm home. I got home and I was sitting in quarantine. I stayed away and I'm like, okay, I need everything just to stay together, just to get me home to my daughter. Like that's all I need is to get home to my daughter. Like Matt has to go back to work. I just need to get home now. And that became like my sole focus. And I was like, I'll deal with the emotional trauma of the games later. Just get me home. And so I did. I sat in hotel quarantine and I processed everything. I bought this giant scrapbook and just like brain dumped everything on there and listened to podcasts and books and did whatever. And then I was like, when I got home, I was wrecked. I was like just emotionally like when you hold on because you have to hold on and then you get to like your safe zone and you let go. It's like, when you get on holidays and you go on holidays and then you get sick. Yeah. It was like that. And I got home and, Maddie and Scotty are like, yeah, she's home. Let's do everything. And I'm like, I could fall asleep on the floor. I'm like, I can just let go now because I've finally made it home. I'm like, I could just cry. I'm like, I'm done.
And didn't she like lock the border like 2 days later?
Literally like a day or two later, it was locked down. I wouldn't have got home.
How long were you away from Maddie?
It was 5 weeks. Ugh. Yeah, 5 weeks. So keep in mind, I'd never left my daughter for one night, not even one night. Yeah. So, but I was like, this is my job. People have to do this all the time. I think back to Maddie in the army. If he was still in the army, he would potentially have to go away. They leave their families on deployment for 8 months or so. And women are leaving their children for that kind of stuff all the time. So I'm like, get it together. It's just hard. You've got to go do your job. You've trained all this time. It's better for her to leave her behind because she's in her own home with her dad, with her grandparents. Yep. She's good. She's safe. And she's young enough that, she'll miss me, but she'll be okay.
Yeah.
And, but it was obviously harder on me. And then I had to do all of this mental stuff to then be in a mental state to compete, to be able to bring it. So I get myself ready to bring it, even though I'm like hurting, and then get physically sick. And I'm like, come on now, come on. But yeah, I did. I spent a lot of time like reflecting and working on it. And I honestly feel like a very different person now.
Yeah, you would.
So what happened the previous year?
So,
what slowed you down then?
So the previous year we trained, and then the games got pushed back like twice. So normally it would be in like July, August.
Yes.
It got postponed, and then it got postponed again. And then they changed it to an online format where they only took 5 people to a private location in the US.
Yeah.
And by that stage for me, I think what happened is that was my postpartum season, right?
Yeah.
So my season was so long, and every time they pushed it back, I was just like wearing out more and more because I didn't get an off season. I had a baby. And then I started like rehabbing and training and trying to get myself back to a good spot.
Yeah.
And then it kept stretching and stretching, and where I would have normally had breaks in there, I didn't have breaks. I just like had to push through and be ready back for the competition floor.
And be a mum at the same time.
And be a mum at the same time, right? So I had to do the games with her in the local gym. We had to organize all of the logistics ourselves and setting up weights, and it's not the same. You know, you walk out into a competition floor and it's like, it's a competition floor.
Electric.
So were you still breastfeeding at the time?
Yes.
How does that work with an athlete as lean as you? Because typically if you get like that fit and that lean, typically like the milk dries up.
I think this is my personal experience anyway. I eat a lot of food, so that helps.
Yeah.
And I don't know. So this doctor lady came into my gym years ago. So she was a CrossFitter and also a GP from the US, maybe even Canada. And she came in and she was like super holistic and, you know, really about like your body is good. Like it's resilient. It can do so much. She's like, breastfeeding is really, really hard, but it's one of the best things you'll ever do. It's super valuable. And she's like, but just don't stress about it. Like, don't stress about it. Just trust like it's a supply and demand situation. Take care of yourself. Don't let it be a worry. And I don't know that. And, you know, I met her, I was probably maybe 2/3 of the way through my pregnancy. And it was just this one person and this one bit of advice that I remember like really stuck with me. When it came to breastfeeding, I was like, the worst thing I can do is stress. I felt like I was like, that's the worst thing. Obviously, I've got enough physical stress with training. So I have to recover, rest, do all the right things, you know, eat well, do all of that. And I just monitored it. And I was like, luckily by that stage, she was old enough too that it was hard. I was definitely more cautious up to like that 12-month mark, you know, or the first 6 months, especially because it was like her primary fuel, most important thing I was doing. And then again to 12 months, it was a little bit more relaxed. And then, I mean, I breastfed her till like 2 and a bit, like 2 and a couple of months. By the end, it's just medicine, right? Like it's not her, it's not her primary.
You got to 2?
Yeah, I got to 2. So my original
awesome.
goal was like 18 months to 2 years. We got to 18 months. I was like, we're still going well.
Wow. Holy cow, that's great.
Not all day, every day, obviously. It changes. It's it goes from food to like supplemental.
Sure.
And then, we got to 2 years, and I had planned on, if the world was normal, I would have just seen out my season, because this is the other thing, right? I didn't want to drastically change something like weaning right before competition, because your hormones go wild.
Well,
So I was like, this is not ideal. So I wanted to just get through that season, feed her as normal, and then cut it away, because she was ready. We were good. We were happy with where we got to. She was more than happy. I could communicate with her that that's what we were doing now, and she could understand it. And we all had to push it all forward a little bit. But yeah, as far as like, it never really changed with how lean I got. It more just depended how I was taking care of myself. So as long as I was still eating enough food, if I was starving and lean, sure. But if I was like lean and still eating a lot of food, I mean, my body always prioritized her. So if I didn't eat and supplement well enough, I would just feel like death. And she was good. She was getting the gold stuff. My body was like, look, I don't care about you. As long as she gets her awesome milk, that's all that matters.
That's it.
And yeah, we seemed to be like, okay, she was fine. Yeah, I trust nature. That's what I always come back to. I have this
nature
like
knows
thing.
best, right?
Yeah, since I was super young, I've always been that way. And I always just go, nature had like a plan, and things are just set out like how they're meant to be. And I think we just have to not like overcomplicate it too much, not worry about it. I never wanted it to be a stress. I'm like, I'm a mom, I make milk, I feed my kid, we stop, we carry on, you know, might do it again one day. Like I just tried not to worry about it. I think nature kind of has it has an order.
Yeah.
But we just kind of like make it a bit more complex than it needs to be sometimes, right?
Absolutely.
Oh,
Well, as humans, all the time.
All
So
the time. Even more so these days, I feel like it's getting even more
and obviously there's
complicated.
more demands, right? Like, so the
Sure.
world, we're also not as primal as we once were, and we have different like working demands and all of that kind of stuff. So we need to adjust it. Like you could go, it's like supplementation, for instance. So people go like, oh, you should just be able to eat a whole diet of organic foods and blah, blah. I do that too. But I also don't just like lie around with my kids all day doing nothing out in the sun and under a tree or whatever anymore. You know, I work and train and do all of these things, and I'm exposed to like social stresses and random stuff. So
environmental, chemicals now that are in our body that weren't here 100 years ago. I mean, I don't think people have any idea the additional toxins and things that we're having to deal with, right? So,
so you got to step it up, right?
You've got to change.
So yeah, I just match that development of the world and how that changes, and as much as I need to, and then keep it as natural processing and try and make my body do most of the work as much as it can.
So subjectively, and this is probably a little difficult to answer, especially because obviously, last year was a real horrible thing as well too, but where do you feel you were as far as your strength, fitness, like where do you think from the 10 years that you've been competing before you went, where do you think you were at?
I would say I was like back to normal. I think I would say I was based off the training and what I was prioritizing, I was as good as I could be. So like these days, I'm not quite as strong as I once was, but I don't prioritize strength. So it's not for lack of like the ability or, because I'm not doing anything right. I just can't prioritize that because I was always super strong and I needed to work on other areas. So based off how I was training, I was as good as I could be. The only thing I would say that changes is you don't get as much downtime and as much recovery like when you have a kid and a business and random stuff. When you be an adult, just an adult in general, and you have to in the early days, I had no bills, no worries. You just go to work. It doesn't matter. Life's pretty simple. Even when I first started CrossFit, there was no such thing as social media. Like I remember Instagram coming out when I was like just starting, and I just like post a picture of my food, So like there wasn't that exposure, that kind of like mental heaviness or anything like that. So the rest and recovery side of things is a lot harder and a lot more work now at my age and where the world is at. But I was like good to go. I showed up and trained as much as I needed to and did all of the things that my body just remembers. Like your body does remember. I don't feel like old when I train. Like I'm older than when I started, obviously like 10 years older, but I don't feel like my body's like shutting down or slowing down. I just have to do more work outside of training. Training is the easy part. That is 100% the easy part. If there's not a child yelling at me, asking for kiwi fruit in the middle of it.
Yeah.
Which is the daily occurrence. So
how did you, like talking about that, we did ask our followers on Instagram some questions, and we had a few come through on managing training and a toddler. Like how?
You know what? Someone said to me,
is there a secret recipe?
It's so funny. People used to go when in the early days when I had like a newborn, I don't know how you do it. And I'm like, well, she doesn't go anywhere. She just stays still. She falls asleep. I do something, feed her, then she falls asleep again. I go back and do it. Now she's fast and opinionated and just wild. So it's so much harder. And it's so funny. Like you don't get the same credit when they're a toddler. It's just like, oh, your kid's like 2 something, like, should be fine. I'm like, it is so much more work now. So much more. And because obviously I'm trying to actively parent and involve her too. I don't want to exclude her. I want her to know what I do and know it as normal and not just like go sit down somewhere away from me. So I take the time. I'm lucky that I can. But the hardest part is just that the schedule changes. So like right now I'm getting up at 5:30 in the morning and then I train for 2 hours. She's sleeping a bit longer at the moment. For whatever reason, big days, being a toddler's hard. So I'm like, okay, I have to get up and I train for 2 hours. Then I get a session done then, and then I can do the other one later. That's what works now. What worked a couple of months ago was totally different. At one point in time, I was training at 8 o'clock at night down in the dark with a floodlight on, like it always changes. And that's probably the hardest part. You have to adapt.
That's
you
really
have
good.
to be flexible. And, it's like before coming today, I'm like, I know I'm going to go home to her. I've got stuff to do. I've got another session to do. I'm like, I have to get up. We had a rough night. I have to get up and at least get a part of it done. And then, sometimes she wakes up and ruins it, and then I have to do it when she sleeps or do it with her. I pick certain workouts that are easier to do with her. If I'm like locked into, say, an aerobic piece for like 45 minutes or an hour, like I might move the days around, you know, and Maddie's going to be home, or I'll do it when she's asleep, for instance. If I'm like lifting and it stops starting, I'll be like, okay, we use it as practice to sit and be patient, watch mummy, count how many I'm going to do. And then I play with her in between and then go back. So I choose how we give and take. And then because she has to learn too, right? That like mummy's got a job, you know, this is what I do. And it's good for her to learn to be patient and and that she can't have the world revolve around her the way that I can't either.
Yeah.
So I remember a couple of weeks ago, I was like, I've got a 45-minute workout. I know it's going to take me about 45, 50 minutes. And I'm like, we're going to use today as practice. It's just her and I home, Matt's at work. And I'm going to set her up with snacks and toys and everything. And I can talk to her. It's at a low intensity, so I can talk to her throughout it. And she's just going to have to stick it out and like learn this lesson. And it was rough, man, like 45, 50 minutes of this kid like, Mommy, I want a kiwi fruit. What are you doing? What's this? I want a snack. I want a drink. Like, this isn't working. Like, just constant. It's like slow torture, right? Like, you're trying to row and do stuff. And she's just like, but I'm like, but by the end of it, she figured out, she was like walking around huffing and puffing. And then she figured out, she was like, I'm going to go do this. I'm going to watch you. I'm going to do what you're doing. I'm like, so yeah, we just balance out those different experiences. And then sometimes I just enjoy the piece of training when she's not there. When Maddie helps me out, they're just blissful.
Because that's on shift work. So he's there sometimes.
He does some day shifts and then he does some night shifts, but he's working in Brisbane. So the days where he's like on night shift are quite short. And you know, sometimes like anyone with a kid will know, like when they have a nap, you really need to chill out for a second because you're on for every other minute.
Yeah.
So sometimes I don't want to train in her sleep because if I don't sit down for like 30 minutes, I just can't do the day and I'm not going to get anything done at all. So I'd rather struggle with her there than be so like run down because I haven't like sat down for, you know, 14 hours or something. So yeah, we work it around and do the best we can. Every day is different. Trying to have structure, impossible. You know, with Matt on shift work and then, you know, I own my own business and then obviously as an athlete have all of these other different things. Trying to have consistency and structure is like, it doesn't exist. So we just have to flow, which is uncomfortable for me. That's not my comfort zone. I like to have things booked in, planned out, and I can't.
Yeah.
There's certain windows I can and the rest I have to roll with. So it's great.
It is. Well, before we get into the business, did you want to ask some of these other questions that we had come through from the viewers?
The only other thing I was going to ask is around your recovery, because obviously you've taken quite a nice break the last, I don't know how long it's been now, a couple of months.
Yeah, I got home like mid-August, September, October, almost.
Is there anything in particular that you've been doing?
Like post-COVID recovery?
Just in general as well, just like.
Well, and how are you now that, I mean, like, you know, it's so funny because, you know, people are saying, right, you've got scarring on the lungs for life and, you know, hearing other people where they had it and like your friend where they had it.
Fine.
A week later, effectively, they're fine. Yeah. So, I mean, there seems to be a real
mixed bag.
Real strange.
Yeah.
So how are you?
Well, yeah, I explained it to Maddie. I said, look, it definitely knocks you about like any illness. I think based off what I know of my body, I think the greatest challenge was that it was something new I was exposed to. So, you know, you think about the first time you ever get the flu or get something like, you know, and it drops you like, and then once you've had it before, you're like, oh, okay, I kind of know how to manage myself and my body's familiar and it has an element of immunity to it. So it's a little bit easier to process. When you're exposed to something brand new for the first time, it rocks your world a little bit and your body's working so hard to fight it because it doesn't know what it is and what to do. So it's a little bit more drawn out, you know, and I truly believe that that's a huge component of it from my experience, and that's all. So I rested. I went into quarantine. Quarantine did nothing great for my physical health because you're locked in a room, you can't move. I felt so lethargic. That wasn't great. Then when I came home, I started the real repair. I decided to take a little bit longer this time because I always kind of like get back into stuff, and I really just needed to I was exhausted. So I was like, this is a long season. I don't know when I'm going to get to compete again because I'm pretty much locked into Queensland right now. It's, you know, a massive expense and time and everything to get anywhere if I can even get there. So I was like, I'm just going to take it slow. So I literally just rested. I did low heart rate aerobic-y type workouts, say for like 45 minutes at the most per day for maybe like 4 days a week, sometimes 3. If I didn't feel like it and I was still pretty tired, nothing. So for a few weeks, that's all I did. And I tried to just re-educate my breathing, like just learn how to just breathe really well again. I relaxed. I ate whatever food I wanted, did any of that. That was not ideal. My gut did not like that, going from like eating like an athlete and then like eating croissants and, sausage rolls from a bakery and stuff. Not good. That put me in a hole. So I don't recommend that. That made me feel worse than anything. But then, so what I did is I started taking care of my health a lot more and slowing down, having saunas, relaxing, spending time in the sun. That was huge.
Yeah.
My skin like hurt from quarantine. I was like so itchy and dry, and I needed
being in aircon without fresh air, right?
2 weeks in aircon.
Yeah.
I was like, I just need fresh air. I need sunshine. I remember like I went down to the beach. I'm like, look, I've got about 10 minutes in me and I'm going to burn. My skin is so fragile right now. I just need to take it slow. So I did. I just took everything slow. And then now, like normally I'm still pretty unfit and feeling like, kind of silly season. I can at this time of year. I would say I feel better and fitter now. And I as in like aerobically, and like my cardiovascular system is stronger than it has ever been at this time of year. Now, I don't know whether that's just because I've taken time to rest. I don't know if it's because I then spent more time like supplementing, eating really well, drinking good quality water, getting out in the sun, I was more deliberate about it because I'd been sick. But like I'm kind of training now the way I wouldn't expect to be at this time of year. And I'm still trying to take it slow, but I'm like, I'm doing pretty well. Like I could probably go into a competition right now and be good. I feel better than I did pre-games.
Wow.
So I don't feel anything like drastic now. I'm lucky, I guess. But I also said to Maddie, no, I'm not lucky. I've invested in my health for a very, very long time, to be honest. It's not an accident. And I think I'm lucky that I don't have any uncontrollable conditions, so anything outside of my power. But I've spent well over a decade learning about my health. Like I take in so much information on how to take care of myself and my family, spending the money on, supplementation, on good food, on, therapies that are going to help me, like put the money into those things. And it's paid off. So then when I had this extra strain on my body, it just kind of like took a hit and then took care of me and was able to do it. So yeah, I'm grateful that I've known what I know and that I've invested in myself for so long, because it paid off. Like it definitely wasn't an accident. And now like I do the same for my daughter. I'm like, it's what I do for me, I do for her, and try to build her immune system up and make her awesome and strong and resilient. And then, obviously there's things outside of your control, but in the things that we control, we nailed that. And I feel good. So I'm kind of like glad I've had it and got it out of the way now, to be honest.
Yeah,
definitely. Well, before we go into the business, then I've touched on supplements. What are your favorites at the moment?
I'm actually keeping it pretty simple at the moment. Everyone knows, because it's like the one thing I always post about. Gut Ride is still my favorite. I have days where I'm like, I don't even need to keep taking this every day, but I'm like, I feel good and I don't want to mess with it, So I'm like, it's kind of my go-to. And I think I ran out when I was in quarantine, and then I started to feel a bit weird in the last couple of days. I'm like, is it because I don't have my Gut Ride? So Gut Ride is still like, it's still my favorite. I feel good, but also it's a part of my routine. It's my morning routine every single day. So it just gives me that like morning flow and purpose in how I start. So yeah, I love that.
Is that original? Or do you take the chocolate?
I have the chocolate now.
The chocolate's pretty awesome.
Chocolate's good. That's overtaken the other flavors now.
Look, I was choc chai for ages. Yeah. And then, but before that, I was more than happy to do OG.
The original?
Yeah. Doesn't bother me if it gets the job done. But now it feels like such a treat once I've had the chocolate. I'm like, it's so enjoyable. So I've been having the rich chocolate.
Have you tried coming into summer as well too, have you tried the cranberry?
I think I did try the cranberry and it wasn't my jam.
The funny thing is that from a flavor profile, because cranberry's kind of more of an American thing, right?
Totally,
You go ocean spray sort of cranberry. When we tried it, the cranberry, as far as a flavor is concerned, is actually the best of all of them, maybe with a caveat on the chocolate, depending on if you're really, really, like, you know what I mean, in terms of how we flavored it.
Yeah.
But yet sales are terrible. It's really weird.
That's so weird. Yeah, see, I
Whereas
just,
chocolate and original, just like,
And raspberry.
and raspberry.
Popular.
But raspberry's not as good as, nowhere near as good as cranberry. Nowhere near in terms of like an actual flavor profile. It's funny.
I just love chocolate.
This is
so
Jeff
I'm
trying
like,
to save his cranberry.
chocolate's my.
I love the cranberry.
Lots of cranberry. Yeah, it's just not my preference of a
Sure.
flavor.
Yeah, of course.
And I love the choc chai. I love the chocolate. That's kind of like more what my palate appreciates.
Yeah.
So I have the chocolate. The new Z Master is the hit in our house right now because every day Scotty's like, purple drink. You know, the great ones. Just like, oh, purple drink. And then she spills the purple drink over our leather lounge and, you know.
Amazing.
It cleans up. So that's amazing. But that's a favorite. And even with Maddie, because he's super slack with his supplements, but like the whole family gets involved with the nice tasting powder now. Like, again, I'm easy.
Yeah.
Because it's a part of my job. It's part of what I do. But
up to them.
That's satisfying the whole family. But at the moment, my absolute fave is the new coffee No Way.
Yeah.
They're like, and especially right now, so I'm going through a period of time of something has triggered and upset my gut. And I don't know what. And I've had this like kind of random stuff just in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah. Maybe the sausage roll.
Maybe look, to be honest, probably. And I'm in the process of literally, it's been like
elimination.
A couple of days of just like I stripped out the gluten, I took away coffee, and I feel so much better already. And I'm like, damn, I really hope that coffee is not it. Please don't be the coffee. But what satisfies me, what fills that void, is I make it like a hot drink.
Yeah,
like,
Tony does too.
I do
Everyone
it every day.
Yeah, my wife does too, yeah.
I put one scoop and
Mm.
I like make it like a hot drink and it's super creamy. I sit there and I'll do it at the end of the day and it's like a full comfort for me that I'm back working with my nutrition coach and like tracking my macros, and I just always leave this window knowing that like I'm gonna have that.
That's good.
So
and the caffeine's not gonna blow you out as well. It's really low in caffeine.
It's super low. I had a look at it. It's less than 3, I think it is.
Yeah, but it's still using real coffee, which is cool.
Yeah.
So like
I think that's what like people enjoy too, because like obviously not everyone can do caffeine like in a normal cup of coffee, but like seeing the granules when you're putting it in the cup, it's kind of like a mind thing, right? You're like, oh, I'm having coffee, but you're not getting that caffeine.
Well, when I was in quarantine, you guys sent me the samples.
Yeah.
It literally like got me through. I like rationed them and I tasted the, what is it? It's like the salted caramel latte one maybe. That was amazing. Yeah. And so I had lost my shaker on the way back and I forgot to ask for another one. So I had this plastic water bottle, this ratty plastic water bottle, and I was like pouring it in and shaking it up and then drinking it like this cold, it was my treat for the day, this like cold brew, because I was so bored and I was just like drinking drinks all day, like rotating between like tea and coffee and shakes and whatever I could to keep me going.
Yeah.
And so and then that hasn't stopped. So they're probably my like 3 favorites at the moment. And I started taking the golden oil. It's golden oil. I started taking the golden oil more when I came home, and nailed that too. Again, just I don't know. I felt like I just needed it. Needed some oils. I felt, especially because I was super dry and itchy.
Absolutely.
And
took the words out of my mouth.
Yeah.
And it's funny because my elbows went really dry, and I'd noticed that I'd actually dropped it off my taking it again. I started taking it again. My whole skin became like, it was getting really dry and patchy and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
But so like oils, you just forget how important they are. But I mean, especially for an athlete, oh my gosh.
So
I mean, everyone talks about omega-3 and like for the brain and what have you, but you need the 7 and the 9, but the 5 and the 7 as well too, which is also in that. So you're kind of getting everything that you need. Bone, I mean, it's just so critical.
Yeah. So. Yeah. And I felt, I was like, I feel foggy. I feel dry. I'm itchy. Like I don't feel like vibrant in the way that you do when you have enough of those.
Yeah.
And so I just started heavy dosing that since I came back, and I've like felt great. So they're probably like my top ones at the moment. But I cycle on and off different things a lot.
Do you use AMP at all?
At times I do like it. To be honest, sometimes I just found that I would forget to take it within the appropriate time window and needed to be a little bit more organized.
Yeah.
I think it would probably be amazing right now that you've reminded me that since I'm training in the morning, because I'm not eating beforehand. And
100%.
you've just triggered my lazy brain because I'm like, I'm waking up early and I'm not eating. I have my gut right before I train.
Yeah.
And then I sip water sort of through it and I just make it through the 2-hour session. And then by the end, I'm like, okay, I'm starting to fade.
We'll get some. And maybe if you can, just do a little trial for us because as I said, like the fundamental theory on that is really great for lifters as well as obviously for opening up the bronchial chambers as well too. It sounds like that's all come back to normal. But grip strength, that sort of stuff, amazing. So it would be interesting to put that back in and see how you try.
Yeah, I'm actually really glad you reminded me because I know, totally forgot.
There's like 1,000 things out there,
so
but specifically I'm thinking that.